So let's talk about monitoring and troubleshooting and what tools you have available. First of all, with any data pump job, you can always attach to a running job to monitor it or even change the job characteristics. It's a pretty simple process. With an export or an import, when you start the export or import job, you'll see the job name at the very beginning of the output. Now, that name is actually the name of the control table for the job. And what you can then do is attach to that by using that exact syntax, attach and give the control table name in another window. And that allows you insight into the job as it's running. It allows you to do things like change the tracing level, monitor the parallelism, look at the progress, and all of that. So it's a really useful tool at the data pump interactive command line. In addition, you could do other things like take a look at the alert log. A tail-F on the alert log will give you that constant update as to what's going on the system. So that's a good way to tell if your system looks like it might be hung, or maybe it's actually just doing a lot of work that isn't producing output. Data pump operations are monitored also by the $V session longops view. So if you're good at using that view to monitor your long-running operations, you can look there. And of course, if you have the tuning pack, you can use SQL monitoring. That's either diagnostics or tuning, or it might be included if you're in the cloud environment. That's included with a lot of the levels of, say, OCI cloud subscriptions that you might have. So check your licensing documents to see whether you have access to SQL monitoring. That's the best insight that you can get into individual long-running SQL statements. The M5 scripts themselves, in order to facilitate monitoring and troubleshooting, has added some basic tracing capabilities so that you don't have to know exactly how to enable them. One of them is the RMAN tracing. So for all of those level 0, level 1 incremental backups, you get the RMAN tracing built in if you're using the M5 script. And it will also allow you to enable data pump tracing. Data pump has a lot of different aspects to its tracing, whether you're tracing the worker, the metadata, the control process, extensibility, and in this case, the transportable or pluggable table space aspect to it. So you don't need to know all of the bit masks that are available and what they mean. Just know that if you enable the data pump tracing with the M5 script, it'll do the right thing for the process that you are following. Now, on top of that, general monitoring always applies. Being able to go back and get an AWR snapshot so that you can understand the performance that you're seeing or that you did see in a migration is super important for diagnosing any problems or for interacting with support. The first thing you'll want to do is to shrink the AWR snapshot interval down to 15 minutes. That way, if you do need to analyze any particular time period, you'll be able to hone in on exactly when something might have been slow or running for a very long time without getting a lot of noise from the rest of the operation. You could set SQL tracing if needed, but SQL tracing can be very verbose. It will create huge trace files on a large migration. So that's not something I would do by default for monitoring. But if you needed to troubleshoot it and maybe rerun a job and say what was going on here, why did it choose this particular query plan, or what was the SQL that was being executed, then SQL tracing is a good tool to have in your back pocket. Export, import, always have metrics equals yes and log time equal all so that you'll get good, robust information for the performance aspect of your migration. The metrics will tell you a lot of information about what each of your parallel worker processes was doing, and the log time will put a timestamp right down to the microsecond for every line in your data pump log file. And then finally, when you're done, you could restore your AWR snapshot intervals back to their original and take another snapshot right at the end of the job. And that way, again, you can analyze the job itself from start to finish, or any segment of it, any 15-minute slice, if you need to analyze that performance. Hopefully you won't have to submit an SR because everything is going to go smoothly and quickly and everything will go as expected. But if you do need to interact with support, here's what you need to upload for the fastest turnaround on your SR and the quickest insights into performance or functionality. The data pump log file, because that will tell us all the information we need to know about the job, like what was the command used, what were the parameters, what version were you running, all of that good stuff. AWR reports so that we can see what was the SQL running, taking up the most time, any wait events or anything like that. And then, of course, those trace files. If you've enabled the data pump tracing with the M5 script, you'll get a robust set of trace files that will help us really hone in on any particular problems that need to be diagnosed or triaged.